creating a workforce map, the HR dashboard. With the big question, what does my workforce look like? A little while ago I spoke with an HR manager and he said, Eric, I have a problem. He said, I have a number of HR business partners who, when they go and sit with a manager or a team leader, they bring an empty block note and they sit with the manager and they say, hey, how can I help you? And this guy says to me, I don't want this to happen. You know why? I want the HR business partner, before he or she goes to a manager, to look at the data and to see, hey, what's the problem for this specific manager, for his specific department? And I want the business partner to look through the data and see, hey, does this person have a problem with employee absenteeism or employee turnover? Does he have an aging workforce? Does he have new vacancies coming up? What's the data showing about his team, about his department, that I can help with? So this guy says to me, I don't want the HR business partner to go to the manager with an empty block note. No, I want the HR business partner to go to the manager with a full block note. Because I want the HR business partner to have insight in the data and to understand what this manager and what his department is dealing with. Because if the HR business partner is able to do that and to say, hey, I see you have a problem with your employee turnover. How can I help you to retain your people in a better way? Or something like, I see that the absenteeism in your department is rather high. How can we work to solve that? He says that's a way better approach to advising the business and to working with the business, because the business partner needs to understand what he or she is working with and how he or she can add value. And I think that's a perfect example of a manager who understands the value of HR data. And in this specific case, HR reporting and HR dashboarding. Now, HR reporting helps to quantify the workforce. As I said, what are the characteristics of my workforce? Who is working in my company? And how are my departments different? HR reporting provides insights in the workforce to both internal HR stakeholders and external non-HR stakeholders, for example, managers, executives, a CFO, but also to the business partner and to the HR manager and the HR analyst. And depending on the person who's looking at the data, that person requires different kinds of data. A CFO wants to see a quantified workforce with financial numbers. The CFO wants to see what the cost of turnover is. The CFO wants to see what the cost of absenteeism is. Well, the HR manager wants to see where turnover takes place in the organization and where in the organization absenteeism is the highest. So different stakeholders are looking at different elements of HR data. HR reporting fits really well in the strategy framework. Why? Because HR reporting is part of the quantification of the workforce. Do we have the right potential? Are people performing how they should be performing? The quality of the workforce. When you think about HR reporting and HR dashboarding, you're thinking about the quantity of the workforce. How many people do I have in my organization today? How does HR dashboarding and HR reporting work? Well, this is the traditional way of doing it. On the left you see a number of databases, a number of human resource information systems. For example, a payroll system, certifications. Do certain people need new certifications in order to do their job well? For example, in the military or in the police or public services. An applicant tracking system. All those different databases can be extracted. And they can be extracted using Excel files or CSV files. And CSV files are comma-separated value files. And you can easily work with those files using Excel. Now, by extracting the data, you can use those Excel files to, on the one hand, do data analysis, just like we did previously. You can also use it to do ad hoc reporting. And with ad hoc reporting, I mean merging those data sets together and then showing what the data looks like. For example, if you have a list of people who are absent in a certain period of time and you have a full list of your personnel, you can connect those two lists and you can see, hey, is absenteeism more prevalent in certain parts of my organizations compared to other parts of the organization? That's the idea of ad hoc reporting. It's taking the data from different data sets, combining it, and then showing it in an ad hoc report. Now this is the more advanced way of working with HR reporting. In this picture you see a number of different human resource information systems which are extracted, transformed and loaded into a big database. And that's on the right top corner, that's a data warehouse. The data warehouse has summary data, unprocessed data, metadata, and usually every month, for example, every month a data dump is created and that's constructed into a data warehouse, which is highly structured and which enables you to analyze the data and to report on the data. Usually a data warehouse is needed before you, or a data warehouse is a handy add-on in order to create HR dashboards. Because for HR dashboards are a standardized way of reporting your data. Until now I've talked about dashboarding and reporting. HR reporting is more ad hoc, demand-based, and HR dashboarding is more standardized. It's of course also demand-based, but it's a standardized way of visualizing data that updates every day or every month or every so often. So in modern or more advanced organizations that are working with data warehouses and that are working with standard reporting and standard dashboarding, this is the way that data is extracted, deposited in a data warehouse where they work with data cubes, which are entities of data about a certain subject, for example about absenteeism. You have a cube with all the absenteeism numbers, and those data warehouses can then be extracted or used to report data and to analyze data. So that's the bare basics of data warehousing. And usually in large organizations, if this is happening, you have an HR data department or an IT department with someone who is focused on HR data, and they have this stuff in check. Usually when an organization has an HR data department, they're in this phase. So this is an evolution of the previous phase that I just showed you. Now, what does an HR dashboard look like? And I am going to show you a number of examples of what an HR dashboard could look like. This is a dashboard of a talent and workforce dashboard, where you see that 12.4% of this organization is a top talent. So you'd almost say they score in the category of top performance, top potential. You see 30% is a top performer, which corresponds to the data set that we looked at in the previous lesson. You see that 424 people left the company, 447 joined. You see headcount by grade, etc. And very interesting, in the leavers department at the right bottom corner, you see regretted and non-regretted loss. Regretted loss are people who are top talent and who leave, and non-regretted loss are people who are leaving who aren't performing that well, so it's not that bad that they leave. The loss is non-regretted. Now you can report in different areas. You can create a workforce overview, you can report on absenteeism, which is a problem for a lot of organizations, especially governmental organizations. You can report on personnel flow, how much personnel is coming in, how much personnel is flowing out. You can report on talent management, diversity, etc. This is an overview of sickness, absenteeism. On the left hand side you see the total absence days per person, which is rather low in this organization. And on the right hand side you see the cost that's associated with that absenteeism behavior. So this is a way of quantifying, hey, how much are people actually absent and what does this cost our organization. In this slide you see the quite famous talent matrix that we talked about in the previous module. You see the low, the low high and the high, which are people who exceed expectation and who are very high performing. They're motivated, willing, and they have a capacity to grow. This final dashboard shows you gender diversity. How many people, male and female, are starters, how many people make promotions, and what is the distribution between males and females, and how many males and females are leaving and joining the company. So this is a way of reporting diversity. Now when we talk about diversity, that's interesting. Diversity is a tracking point for a lot of organizations, and if you're ever asked to report on diversity, there's a lot of different things you can report about. You can report about gender, what we just saw, but also race. Age is a big factor of diversity, ability or disability, sexual orientation, etc. However, the problem with diversity is that there's a lot of privacy constraints. For example, in Europe it's really hard to report on anything more than just gender because you're not allowed to store that data and to report on that data. It's that simple. So in terms of diversity, it's really hard to keep track of your data. And in the US, this is slightly easier. Bottom line, when we talk about HR reporting and HR dashboarding, keep in mind that HR reporting is a hygiene factor. You need to avoid mistakes. It's similar to bad hygiene. If you have bad hygiene, people will notice. If you have good hygiene, people won't notice. Because hygiene is considered normal. If you make mistakes in your reporting, people will notice. If you do your reporting right, people will assume it's right. You know, that should be normal. That's how people see it. A thing to remember is that ad hoc reporting, so making reports every now and again and doing it on a manual basis, is not necessarily bad. But most of the time, it is bad if you need to do it multiple times a year. If you are actively reporting data and you're working with data and you're creating the same reports again and again and again, those actions should be optimized to be fully effective. And that also connects with the final point on this slide. When data and metrics become an ongoing need for the organization, they should be automated. Anyway, this is a quick overview on HR reporting, and I'll link in the course material to an article where you can read even more about it. But I just wanted to provide you with the basics because this is the right moment to do it. We're talking about strategic workforce planning now, and knowing what your organization looks like today is a big part of strategic workforce planning, because if you want to follow your strategy and you want to know what should our workforce look like tomorrow, then you start at how it looks like today, and then you follow the strategy and you make changes to your workforce.